Now, testing 1, 2, 3, please.
Hello, how are you?
I should make that the opening. Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we are very fortunate because I haven't had a guest dreamer in like a month. I'm extremely fortunate. This is our friend Kelle Sparta, and she is a transformational shaman, and she's going to tell you what that is. But just to get the little bit of housekeeping out of the way, you can find her at KelleSparta.com. That's K-E-L-L-E, Kelle with an E, Sparta like the warriors of the... Were they Greek warriors, technically? Well, they were Spartans. They were Spartans and the Greeks, like the city-state, Sparta, yes. Also at the SpiritSherpaPodcast.com or Spirit Sherpa on multiple podcasting platforms. Also, Kelle Sparta 1, the number 1, on Facebook. And I forgot to do my own housekeeping because I'm terrible at this. I don't like...
Technically, it's SpiritSherpaPodcast.com, not the Spirit Sherpa Podcast.
So yes. So we're clear. Yes. And yes. I'm terrible at that too. But I'm also terrible at remembering to shill myself. So I'm going to say, hey, stop right there. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. I always need more volunteer dreamers. Also, please, links in the description below. You can buy a t-shirt, coffee mug, keep me in business here. Also, 10 currently available published works of historical dream literature. Number 11 is coming soon. Working on the audiobook version of that. Going to try and do a simultaneous release. And that is the housekeeping. Try to keep it under 30 seconds. Back to the real show. Our friend Kelle. So I have no idea what a transformational shaman is. And I don't think my audience does. So if you want to say a few words about that.
Yeah, so I'm a transformational shaman, it gets said both ways. And what I do is I help people who have gone through therapy and gotten to the point where therapy is sort of like they don't feel like they're making progress anymore. And they're like, okay, I feel like I'm done there. And then they come to me because they're looking for the next layer of their work. And so I work with what I refer to as the wounded well, right? And we work on unwinding all of the pieces and parts that are left in the being. And we're digging down through shadow work, which in the spiritual world is, we call it shadow work. It's about looking into the dark spaces inside of yourself and pulling out the things you find, the dark, smelly, nasty looking things, and going, okay, that's mine. How do I integrate this and make it something I can use instead of something that limits me?
For sure. I think that is very important. I mean, there's two things you said, and there's so much of the practice of psychology that is just getting people from disaster back to stability. But merely being stable is not actually living your life. There's the next step, which usually if you can get someone stable, they begin their own journey and move forward from there. And they find a lot of spirit guides in a lot of different forms. And it's nice to have someone say like you, who's like, this is actually what I do. I can show you, or at least help you explore the next step of the journey. And there was something else that triggered me there that made me think.
The shadow work, maybe.
The shadow work thing. Yeah, that is one of the hardest things that people... For people to do is to look at the parts of themselves they don't want to see, the parts we bury on purpose because they're unpleasant, and very often it's like a hidden infection. It's not like it isn't going to kill you. It will if you don't look at it, if you don't find it, if you don't deal with it, and a lot of those things can hold people back. And that's really very cool. And
from my perspective, I find that people try to do shadow work too early.
Oh yeah.
And so, there's 2 stages that I have people go through before I even let them into the shadow work piece, because the first one's solidifying or finding emotional safety so that you feel like you're not under attack all the time, because you can't grow if you feel like you're under attack because it's leaving your comfort zone, right? And then the second piece is solidifying their identity, because if they don't know who they are, then there's no way to hold the container for the deeper level work. And so we do those 2 steps first, and then we do the shadow work.
And that is a great sign, I would say, of a truly competent therapeutic assistant in whatever form, is someone who knows. It's almost like being a trainer in a gym. You don't put someone on the 600-pound bench press on day one. You don't. They're gonna tear muscles and they're not coming back. You got to kind of ease into it. Take what you can handle slowly. And yeah, that's something I've said on Twitter too, is talking about a lot of the identity politics. We're not getting into that, but the idea of people that I go to the Alice in Wonderland example, the caterpillar. He asks her, "Who are you?" And I think even the Mad Hatter or the March Hare, one of the two, who are you when you are at home? He asks Alice as well, and it's this idea of who are you when you are all alone? What are you not in relation to other people? And then you can understand how to be in relation with other people. If you're just getting your identity from feedback, there's no stable core that's going to carry you through when you got to make your own decisions or, stick to your guns when you really believe something.
Yeah. And all of my people are empaths. So because they're empaths, they're discerning the difference between a self and other is very difficult. And so, I work on an energetic level as well as on a mental, emotional level for how to change that, and so that you can actually be solid in your own self, right?
Oh yeah. For sure. So and that's a lot of people look at the say mind body thing and realize that it's like the whole yin yang thing. It's not that yin or yang is either one is superior. They are literally equals in every possible way, but opposites. And so being highly rational has its upsides and its downsides. Being highly emotional or in tune or empathic with other people, tremendous skill, but also a drawback. And if you can, look at that, even like with that shadow work thing we were talking about, that you gotta feel and understand and know and accept and really embrace the downsides as well and watch out for them. Yeah. Well,
I like to say every challenge comes with a gift and every gift comes with a challenge.
There you go. Very nice. Very nice. Well, if you feel that very well expressed, and I think it does very well expresses what you do, and we can move on with the dream stuff.
That sounds great.
Great. So, okay, we're going to, as per my usual process, I'm going to shut up and listen. Our friend Kelly's going to tell me her dream, and we're going to see what I can do with it. So I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so I just need to clarify by saying I don't get a lot of detail in my dreams because I'm just like in and out. So I'll do the best I can to remember as much detail as I can.
For sure.
We'll see if you can draw more out as we go through. But so in the dream, I am in a house. I don't know if it's my house. I think it is my house, actually. It's not my actual house, but it feels like my house in the dream. And there are a bunch of people all milling around like they're waiting for something to do, but they're not actually engaged yet. They are, and the house is big enough to accommodate them, so it doesn't feel super crowded, but it just feels like there's people waiting. And I'm getting ready. I feel like I'm getting ready to task them with stuff to do. And so I'm like taking inventory, right? I'm walking through the house and I'm taking inventory, and every drawer I open, every cabinet I open, everything is filled with flour. And not like scented flowers, but flour like for baking bread sort of flour, right? And I mean, just like an entire drawer would have loose flour in it, right? It's just like there had to be 70, 80 pounds of flour all over my kitchen, right? And just, tucked away. It's like there's no place for anything else. It's all just flour. And yeah, and I was a little surprised to see all the flour, but I wasn't distressed by it. And I think that's about the sum total of what I remember of the dream.
Okay. Yeah, dreams can be extremely brief. And they don't have to be, a multi-part epic. Some of them aren't. But there was something it's one thing I like to say to people and remind folks is that dreams kind of self-select for importance. If you remember them, there was something worth remembering, some connection. That's my working theory anyway. Then again, I remember very often that I did dream. Nothing but flashes, images that are disconnected to anything, nothing I can grab onto or even was it 2 nights ago? Even this morning, maybe. I know I dreamed nothing sticks with me.
Yeah.
Now, I like to think that's because my brain is just so busy during the daytime. It's just a continuation of thoughts I've already had again and again and again. So, even in the briefest of experiences, there can be something we're going to draw out of it. So I'm going to go actually to page 2 here. Actually, in the most recent book I'm working on, book 11 in my historical dream literature series, the doctor was talking about if you just kind of sit down to start describing what you think you saw, as much as you can remember, he said you will very often fill multiple pages. That has been, before I even encountered his book, that has been my experience with folks. If they take a dream, feels like it lasted 30 seconds, we get an hour and a half conversation out of it every time without fail. So we go, as Vizzini said, back to the beginning. You're in a house. Where do you appear in the house? Do you have a sense of just popping into existence in the living room, so to speak, or walking through a door to enter?
The first memory I have of it is I'm in the kitchen.
Okay, you're in the kitchen. Do you have a little bit of a description of where you were in the kitchen in relation to other objects? Do you have a visual of the space, the colors, the placement of things?
So the kitchen it's a relatively new kitchen, high-end finishes. I'm in the space. So there are other people in the kitchen with me, and I am standing kind of in the center of it, right? It's a squarish space, and there are probably 4 other people in the space with me. I can hear other people in the next room over who are also waiting to be put to work. I think that's about it.
Okay. Do you, so you said you were kind of maybe standing in the middle, and it was a rather maybe large space. Do you remember anything about the other people that were there? Male, female, tall, short, dressed a particular way?
It's male and female. One woman is shorter, dark brown hair, shoulder length. She's the only one who is actually got a face. The rest are actually, she's the only woman. Actually, that's interesting. She's the only woman. Everybody else that I'm sort of sensing are men, and they're all, 5'10" to 6 foot sort of range, medium build, brown hair. I don't know. Weird.
Okay. Sorry, I got caught up for a second there looking at my own hair. You mentioned hair, and now I'm playing with it. One of these days I'm going to do a video where it's the morphing as my hair grew out since last summer. I had a short haircut, and I'm like, well, wizard got to have long hair, so I just decided to let it grow. Plus the COVID lockdown, anyway, who wants to go get a haircut? There you go. So kind of interesting. I mean, that is, and maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. But the idea that you were, so just to start kind of recapping already, you didn't appear in the bedroom, in the garage, in the living room. You appeared in the kitchen, and it's a nice kitchen. It's a you said a high quality space, but it's and kitchens have a lot of symbolic meaning in terms of it is the core of the home in a way of like feeding, nurturing, but it's like a work space as well. Like if you had appeared in a garage with a shop with a wood mill, there's a purpose to the place, and that there was both men and women there, but that the person that stood out to you, the only one that you can recall had a distinct features, was one short-haired, dark-haired female.
Long-haired, shorter, petite woman.
Yeah, long dark hair, but a shorter, petite woman.
Petite woman. Yeah.
And when you think of her, any connection with yourself? I mean, anything pop up just off the top of your head?
She reminds me of the energy of a woman I knew 20 years ago, but not somebody I actually, She reminds me of a woman I knew back in the days when I was married to my former husband, and she was one of the other wives on the. My ex-husband was a submariner, and so she was one of the other wives from the boat, and
Okay.
and she was the life of the party girl. She always had a case of wine, and she taught me how to drink wine actually. So yeah, she was life of the party person, very
Interesting.
tomboyish.
Gotcha. And did any of the other people in the kitchen, were they engaged in anything? You did say they were waiting for you to kind of delegate.
Yeah, they were standing around and talking to each other. Almost, with that sort of casual conversation that you get at parties, sort of thing. But it was definitely not a party. It didn't have the party feel to it. It was just, a bunch of people who knew they were going to be working together, hanging out and socializing until things got started, right?
Okay. So, did you do anything in the kitchen before moving on to kind of observe the other people in the other room, or did you actually ever leave the
I
kitchen to
never
go?
left the kitchen.
Okay, so the whole dream took place in the kitchen, but you had this knowledge that there were even more people waiting to receive your instructions or help you coordinate
Yes.
their activity. And you
Yes.
had the sense they were just scattered around the house or specific places.
I felt like they were in the living room area. I didn't feel like they were all over the house, just in that one space. It was like overflow. There, not everybody was going to be. If everybody was in the kitchen, it would have been packed, right?
Gotcha. There's kind of a practical distribution of bodies as well
Yeah.
in this sense, and yeah, you said you had the feeling that it was a large house, so that it was
Mhm.
not that it did not have a crowded feel.
Yeah.
Um, and they were socializing. There was like a friendly camaraderie going on of people that were, how would I say it? Well, how you said it, socializing in anticipation of working together, maintaining that social level of the joint effort they were going to make.
Right. I feel like some of them knew each other and some of them didn't.
Okay.
So, if that's relevant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Any thoughts or feelings get triggered or pop up? Cut me off and jump in. Both familiar and say strangers, but all coming together for a kind of singular purpose under
Yeah.
your direction. Very
Yeah.
interesting there. How did you feel about being looked to for instruction or coordination? Was there any sense of that in the dream?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I do that all the time. It's sort of it's just been my life.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, that's one of those things where I would look at it, ask that question. Had you given a different answer, it would take us in a different direction. The idea of, I was a little awkward there. I wasn't sure what to do. Well, why that in that space in this dream? But no, you're having a very consistent feeling with your actual life, which is, I've done this 100 times. No sweat.
Right.
And what was the process of starting to look through drawers? Did you have an idea of needing to find something first, and that sent you on a quest to search?
Well, I feel like there was a project that I was going to be doing with them, and I was taking inventory for the project.
That's right.
Right?
That's the other reason I go through these things twice, because I wrote that down. I swear I did, and I'm glad you reminded me. I'm wondering, and sometimes these things happen and sometimes they don't, but there's very often a transition from one set of images and feelings and experiences into the next. And I'm wondering if there's a connecting line or a triggering moment or something that happened immediately before the, oh yeah, I should take inventory, popped into your head. don't know if there's something there. What kind of spurred that transition?
I didn't remember this until you said it,
Yeah.
but someone did come up to me and asked, okay, are we going to get started? One of the guys.
Okay. Interesting. And then did he come with you on this search, like over your shoulder, like following? That just triggered you to think, well, all right, time to get started. It looks like they've indicated they are ready to begin. Do you remember where you went first to look in the kitchen? What was the first place you tested in terms of searching for what you were looking for?
I don't. I think it would have been a cupboard. Like the pantry. But I was so shocked when I opened the drawer, when there was another drawer that I opened, that I was so shocked when I opened it that it kind of just like took over everything when I opened the drawer, and there was like raw flour just sitting loose in the drawer. The drawer was completely filled with flour, right?
For sure.
And so that kind of took over everything in my awareness after that. So, but I know I looked other places before I saw that. And then I started opening other drawers and finding more drawers filled with flour. And I was just like, okay then. And there had been flour in the cupboards too, but it was in packages, right? So I was just like, well, then we have lots of flour. So
right, lots of raw. I'm getting this my own associative process of flours of raw material, even refined flour, say unprocessed bread or whatever it's going to be. So you've got this abundance of raw material to create something, maybe even more than you need, and it's also the connections in my head of this idea of it being unbounded. It's not in packages, loose in the drawers. There's something going on with that. But you did mention, and I don't want to put you on the spot or try and pin you down too much if things are hazy, but the idea that you might have looked in cabinets at first and there was flour, but it was in bags. It was actually in bags first? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that there's all this loose flour in drawers, but the kitchen is spotless.
Okay.
There's not like flour all over the floors and stuff. So usually if you have loose flour in a drawer, you open and close it, there's going to be flour everywhere.
It just flies up in the air. Yeah. Just from that kinetic motion. Yeah. And that's, so the flour's in back. So at first you're looking in, say, cabinets. If you search your memory a little bit or just get a sense of it, is it like the transition from bagged flour to unbagged flour was going from cabinets to drawers?
Yeah.
That's interesting too. I don't know what that stands out to me. That idea that there's something about cabinets, maybe the height that they're at, they're up above, maybe.
Well, it's a pantry, so it's a full size, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the pantry's full size, and when I went to the drawer, I was not expecting flour in the drawer. I was expecting to find tools and implements and things like that to use. I had looked in the cupboard and in the pantry and been like, okay, so we've got some stuff there that we need. Let's get some stuff to make stuff with. And it was just more and more and more of the flour.
So was the pantry, say, a separate room attached to the kitchen? Like you went through?
No, it was just a full size, floor to ceiling cupboard.
Gotcha. Okay, so the cupboard wasn't actually, say, above the countertop type of cupboard. It was more of a full sized pantry cupboard where you open, say, both doors and there's just a bunch of shelves, and they were all packed with flour, or just a few bags scattered around? Was it like a wall of flour bags?
It did not feel like a wall of flour bags. No, it felt like a pantry that had other things in it and then a bunch of flour on one of the shelves, sort of things.
Okay, so kind of mixed in with other supplies was this. So there's the beginning there of the flour symbolism. Whatever that is you look in the pantry first, and your mind says associate this with the flour, with the raw material, with the bags, and then you go looking for tools to process the flour, say, or to begin the actual work you're there to do. And now it's loose. it's unbagged, unbounded, and it's in the place where the tools should be. So there's something going on with the tools to do the job being missing, and in its place is just more raw material. I don't know if that spurs any thoughts in your mind.
You know what? That's a very interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, this is what my brain does. My problem is staying connected with reality. having these strange associative thoughts of like, what does that look like from all these different angles? That's where my brain goes. So.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for me. One of my biggest challenges with my business has been that I have so much to say and so many directions that I can go with it in, because I've been studying since I was 5 years old. So I'm 45 years worth of stuff I can talk about, right? And so I keep looking, one of my biggest challenges when I was getting started was getting focused and picking a path, right? And I'm right now in my business looking for, I'm considering multiple avenues of expansion.
Okay. Did this dream, just out of curiosity, did this dream happen relative to starting to consider that expansion?
Yeah, it was during that time frame. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's a very strong connection right there. Then you may have already come to that on your own in terms of, we're going to get to that eventually. I probably shouldn't. I almost asked you a question that was going to put your thoughts in my head.
I wouldn't have given you the answer because you told me you didn't want to know.
Okay, I appreciate that. No, that's good. Yeah, not yet. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Are you ready to hear?
That's my problem. I'm getting ahead of myself. I look at the end result and I'm like, I'm there because I can imagine it. No, gotta walk the path. So this that kind of ended the dream, is looking for the tools and finding them in the place of that. Was the flower any kind of any response, interaction, activity from the people nearby as you're conducting this search? They helped, they commented, they ignored you?
Ignored me. Yeah, they kind of just went on with their stuff, and I presume that the people who knew me well enough to know to stay out of my way until I was ready to get started, because I have a process that I do.
That sounds like me. That's probably my wife's number one complaint with me too, is like, Ben, you just do your process. Leave me out of it. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, I know everything takes forever, and I've got a very specific thing. Not to make this all about me, but this is what I do. It's talk about myself in relation to these things. Where do my ideas come from? Sometimes it takes me a long time to figure out my process, and that's like, it's because I need to have such a specific, clear picture. Step 1.5. Do that first. 1.5A. This is part of okay, let me map this out. So I just take the notes. It's like, and then by the time I do 13, 14 steps and their annotations down the road, and I'm like, now I'm ready to begin. 2.5, 3 hours have gone by, and that's all project time for me, trying to figure out what to do. I just needed things to be very specific. So yeah, it drives my wife crazy. She's more like, I'm just going to start and figure it out. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't.
I do kind of a hybrid of the two of you.
Yeah, and that's probably better.
Inventory of all my resources before I get started, and then I like to think about where I'm going and where I want to end up. And then I go, okay, so if I want to end up here and I've got these resources, then the most efficient path is X, Y, and Z. Great, all right, and then I get going, and then I let the process inform me as I go from there. So
yep, yeah. I know it's definitely in my autism that I'm like that hyper focused on every little detail along the way, every step. What does that look like? And to the point of like how many, and this is stupid, how many steps, literally physical steps between resources. Like, not that it matters, not that I have to OCD take 10 steps, but I'm like, okay, if I'm walking back and forth between these two things, that's 500 steps. Let me just move this object over here. I mean, that makes sense too, but I actually go through that process of counting steps. Let's not focus on my strangeness. Sorry. Okay, so that was kind of the length and breadth of the breadth, speaking of flower, of the dream itself. Very short experience, but very kind of focused on these key ideas. And I didn't put nearly as many carrots in there as I was going to. So we actually did get through the deep dive to try and get a little more detail, and some things popped up for you that were, I never thought of it that way. That's why I love those moments where you're like, sudden connection gets made, and I love seeing it in people's eyes. Like, oh, I never thought of that. I was saying something else. Oh,
we're moving on to stage 3.
Yeah, stage three interpretation. Okay. What does it all mean? So we I think we did hit on something because you had that resonance moment. The idea of, what was it again? Looking for the tools and finding only more raw materials, and that took us onto that other path. But back to the beginning. So the dream tends to set up, okay, imagine you're in this kind of scenario with these dynamics, and that's a particular kind of thought within which the other specific actions are couched. So you've got this, you're in the kitchen, a place of the hearth and home, and a place of work, of creating things that will say feed people. That's where food comes out of the kitchen. And you've got this representation of pretty much the only woman, the only person that really stands out with a face, and it immediately reminded you of this person from your past who was the say military wife and very much life of the party. And so there's a reason your brain said, look at your, say, maybe work life, your productivity, this generativity in a way, talking about the was it Erickson's stages, this giving back, feeding people knowledge or food. And your brain wanted you to remember this woman and how she maybe taught you to drink wine. You mentioned that too. What when you think about that in the context of there to do work, she's there to receive instructions from you and be a part of this work, but she's showing you, her presence is showing you something about being in that space. Does anything come to mind?
I'm working too hard.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped into your head?
Yeah, I need a vacation, son. Fierce.
Right now you're in a space where you're putting so much effort into things that it's a little overwhelming, maybe?
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's a very important thing to kind of hear ourselves say out loud. Like, because you probably you seem very similar to myself, driven to do this thing. Like I put 10, 12-hour days in just because that's what I do. If I'm not doing an interview, I'm doing my book editing or working on 100 other things, puttering around. And it's very hard for me, say, to schedule a vacation in there. Like I don't even know what that looks like to me. I don't know what it looks like to do nothing. Is that kind of where you're at?
I am very good at doing nothing when I take the time to do it. Okay. I went on Walkabout in 2002. I took the entire year off, and so that got me out of what you just described and into the ability to actually take down. It took me a month to stop going, I should. But so I can do that. I just, like every other weekend for the last 6 weeks has been an event that I was attending or speaking at or whatever, and it's required a lot of travel and so on. And I'm not working 10 and 12-hour days. I'm just tired. Yeah. It's been a long couple of years with the pandemic and everything, and I've been transitioning my business to take me from entrepreneur. And I'm up-leveling my identity right now out of entrepreneur and into business owner CEO. And that's huge work, right? Anytime you change your identity, you're changing the way you see everything. And so, there's required integration time and downtime for that. And I have not found the time to take it, even though I know I need it. And normally I would have taken it long ago, but because of the way the schedule fell in the last 6 weeks, it has not allowed me to do that. So
gotcha.
I'm looking forward to this weekend.
So do you have a scheduled vacation coming up? Is that, have you made that time yet?
I have not made a vacation yet, but I am taking this weekend as a solid, I'm not doing any work. I'm just taking the weekend off. I have another event after this weekend that I will have to go to, but yeah, but then I will be looking at a vacation very soon after that.
He was walking near the keyboard. Sorry.
Yes.
He needed to make a special appearance. More cats, less me talking probably. I'd get more clicks. But that is very important. So did you come to that decision after the dream? The decision that I'm going to take this weekend off? It's not specifically related.
No, I've known for a long time I've needed some time off. But I had anticipated my first event would be some downtime, and I had really needed it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'll speak. I'm the first speaker in the entire cycle. I'll have the rest of the time to myself. And that was not how it worked out. And so I needed the time back in the end of October, and it's just been this like mad dash ever since. And I'm like, okay. So.
Oh yeah. No, I know that too. It's like, for me, vacation is not vacating, like leaving my home space. To me, vacation is, I don't leave the house, I don't see anybody, and I don't have to put on pants for a week. That's like a vacation for me. But I still find things to do.
I live that way all the time.
I know, right?
I never have to leave my house.
Our audience will never know whether...
Not looking at these walls. That's for me.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I'm very much a homebody. It's great that other people are different. But for me, travel is very stressful. Yeah, and going to say a place full of other people's at a convention, and even and I'm a speaker. It's the stress, and then dealing with everybody, and there he goes, rolling over. I love my kids.
You're an introvert. I'm an extrovert. I'm an ambivert, I should say, because I'm fine being by myself for long periods, and I love it. But I have to go out and be with people sometimes. And
Fair enough.
Just so happy.
I'd say that's a tremendous advantage too, because and that's a great point to raise up too for people watching, is that there are, say, 90% introverts and 90% extroverts, and then there's people that are right in the middle, and they're fine either way, and that's a tremendous advantage as well. It's a good way to be. I kind of wish I was. Well, I don't know. Why would I should myself? But I can see there are advantages to being more extroverted, and they are denied me because it's not comfortable. It's not the way I function. You take the good with the bad, but that's a tremendous advantage. But back to the actual dream. Sorry, I just had another thought too. So following the train of dream logic, so to speak, you're put in this generative feeding place. You're in, and you've got the representation of the woman who kind of reminds you to take a break and be good to yourself as well. But she's also there to work for you, work with you. She's not an antagonist of the dream. She's a support who's actually working under the direction of your creative mind as well, your creative drive, generativity in that sense. Trying to remind you to put her to work too, or the idea she represents as well. And there's something that happened there as well, that you've got this say male or masculine representation, possibly of task focus, of the drive to create or produce something that comes to you and says, "Hey, we're ready. Are you ready?" Reminding you you've got a team waiting for you, that you've got people working under you, and that they're there for a purpose, and that creates an obligation for you as the leader to say, "Oh, I better make use of these resources that I've got." And then the next thought the dream connects you to is you go looking for supplies to get the job done, and you find them bounded in these bags, contained within their place of purpose. But you go looking for the tools, and I mentioned this before too, and it seemed to trigger something as well. And that's the next thing I want to focus on, is this looking for the tools. You find that the resource, the thing you would use to transform into what you're going to feed people, is just everywhere in the place of the constructive materials to get the job done. So if you focus on that element of the dream in context, does anything come to mind?
No, but when you were talking about the woman, and her being working, but still being the representation of taking time off, right? the event that we went to this past weekend was a wedding, friend of my husband's, and it was, it was a lot of fun, but it was an 8-hour drive in each direction, right?
Wow.
And
that would stress me out. Yeah.
we were there for 2 days, so it was 8 hours, spend the night there for the wedding, drive home the next day, right? But what happened was, on the way down and on the way back, I was working on some stuff for the next phase of my business, and I was laying out some structure on the phases of spiritual evolution. And then I was, on the way back, I had laid out a mastermind program for people who are doing work like I'm doing. And all of that was done within the context of this fun event that we went to that was just loads of fun. I didn't think about work at all. Well, no, I didn't think about my work at all. I did some work on somebody at the wedding, but they were like, oh, I've got this thing. I'm like, yeah, okay, come over here and I'll just fix that for you. But, I didn't think about how to do my business or how to expand my business or anything about that. I just was there at the wedding, and when people asked what I did, I told them, but yeah. But yeah, it was, so it was me having some downtime, and I worked all the way down. I was just like, I had nothing on my calendar after 1:00 when we were driving down, and my emails were exploding, my messages were exploding. Everybody wanted something from me and needed something from me, and I was just like, So, and then on the way back, it was mostly easy, but I was ideating an idea with my husband, and who was driving, thankfully, not me. But
yeah, I get that too. So sometimes my brain's busy and I'm driving, and I'm like, I don't remember the last 5 minutes of the road. I could have hit somebody, and that would have woken me up, but I had the road hypnotism. I get that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it really sort of reflected the energy that you just described of her, right? Having the good time, but also still working, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's
what that weekend was. This dream was like, I think it was like a week and a half ago. So
it was after the wedding thing or before?
No, I just got back yesterday from the wedding.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it was even before that experience, but then now talking about the dream. So this idea had been percolating in your mind even before, and now you can kind of draw a specific example of how it's kind of, okay, this is what I do. This is, so I hesitate to tell people your dream is telling you this is true, or this is what you should do. A lot of times dreams are just thinking through an idea. It's kind of holding that idea up for examination without necessarily endorsing it as true or false. And then you get to reflect on that after the fact and say, how do I feel about that now that I've seen that thing in action? And then you find an example like this where you're like, even on a vacation, even on my way to a fun event that should be leaving aside other things that are important, but not what I'm doing. That struck me as well. Is like, it's very hard for me to be fully present sometimes. I'm always in my head somewhere else. No matter what I'm doing, there's always something else going on inside that doesn't quite allow me to be fully present. I don't know if something is connecting with you.
No,
on
presence
that
is not my problem. Yeah,
not your
presence.
problem.
Yeah, I actually teach presence. So
fair enough. I'm more aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really present with where I am in the moment, which if I was, but it depends on what I'm present to, right? So I've not been diagnosed with ADHD, but I have a lot of the hyper focus, So, like my husband disappeared while I was in my work, right? I was very present to my work. And then I came out of my work and I'm like, oh, hi, how are you?
Here we are. Yeah. No, my wife and I are the same way. I won't see her. I'm working from home. I won't see her for 8 or 10 hours, and she's off doing her own thing. And I don't even realize we haven't spoken since we both got up. It just happens. Yeah. No, well, that's good. So I'm very happy to be, as I say, very happy to be wrong if it takes us where we're going. So it's not It's not this connected idea of presence of focus. There's something else going on there of at least holding up the idea for consideration of what it is you're focused on, perhaps at any given moment. And I wouldn't even say that necessarily you make good use of the time you're stuck in a car to sit anyway, to kind of, pen out some ideas. Why not? I mean, some people read, some people listen to the radio. You weren't at the wedding yet, so it's not like you were distracted from that activity by other thoughts. You're just making good use of time. And time is a resource too. Time can be bounded, I guess, in bags, like in the flower. There are blocks of time that we can use. And then sometimes there's the rest of it. There's this scattered time that's everywhere around us that we have a hard time collecting up to use for something, for whatever we're driven to accomplish, to use it for. That's the kind of metaphors that my brain goes to with this idea of flower and resources and productivity. It seems like there's very much themes of that going on in the dream. Yeah, so it could be time, it can be any resource. But it is very interesting that it's flower. Do you have any go Freudian with it, childhood experiences with cooking with your mother or anything like that? Any kitchen focused ideas?
Yes.
What do you got?
Sorry, my screen just went off in the middle of it.
Oh, so you had to do a manual reboot?
Dark. My screen went dark. The computer still showed that it was on, but nothing was happening. I tried Control-Alt-Delete twice. It didn't do anything. It just sat there. I pressed the button, and it wouldn't turn off.
Oh.
I had to actually turn off the power strip to get the computer to turn off to reboot it.
Wow. Have you been having any other computer troubles lately? Is this new? This is new?
It's a new hard drive last year. So.
Wow. Yeah, I was just telling you, I had to replace motherboard, CPU, RAM. I just had the whole thing repeatedly blue screen of deathing me in the face, and the whole thing, I'd be going fine, and the whole thing would just freeze and scream at me. Oh, it was awful.
I had nothing. I have no idea what happened. I've never done this before.
Right? Oh, I hope it's not the beginning of a trend. My machine was my motherboard.
I'm that it isn't.
my motherboard was a hand-me-down from a friend back in 2010. It was a 10-year-old motherboard. It was ready to die. It was on its last legs for years.
I bought this refurbished 2 years ago.
So you should be all right.
Hard drive last year, and it's a solid state hard drive. So
those are fantastic. I didn't trust them for the longest time. I thought they were sketchy and but they're fine. They're every bit as good as I have a storage drive that's a hard disk drive, just in case everything goes to crap. You can forensically recover stuff from this. So that's where I store my videos, even if it's slower for transfers and whatnot. So, but
I store everything in the cloud. So
even better, probably. I should. I'm going to make a note here. We got 52. We're getting back to it.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, I have a 4 o'clock. So,
okay. Well, how soon is that? Is that in 25 minutes?
25 minutes.
Okay, let's get you done by then. So we'll get right back into it. I was asking you about any experiences cooking in the kitchen as a child, and you had a moment. What do you got?
And I had a moment where I shut it all down, evidently. So my mother and I connected in the kitchen. That's where it was a big thing for us. I was helping her cook from the time I could be sat on the counter and not burn myself, so like 3-4 years old. And once a year, and so that I was waiting for you to ask this question, once a year, every year, we would bake bread. And we would start at 6 o'clock in the morning and we would finish at midnight. And you want to talk about a project that required a strict timetable. We would make 18 to 20 loaves of bread with one oven in that time frame. And we would bake all of our bread for the year and then freeze it. And so that was a tradition that was long-standing in my life with her. And I carried forward for years afterwards. That's very interesting. The woman I was thinking of actually asked me to do that with her at one point. I don't think we ever did it, but she had asked about it. Wow. She wanted to learn how to do it. So,
I starting to get multiple layers to the dream.
Yeah, right.
These connections. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hadn't thought about that in years. That was like 25 years ago. So
Wow. Yeah.
um, longer than that actually. I'm old. Okay. So
You and me both.
I would have been like 23 at the time, and I'm 52. So yeah, longer than that. But yeah, so it's a big thing, and it's also my husband and I. My husband was a chef, and
Okay,
so
the
it's
kitchen
a
really
place
is the
where
heart of your home.
the
And
kitchen is the heart of my
yeah,
home. Food is love in my life.
yeah,
Yeah,
very big symbolism around all of that. And this is another thing I tell folks with dreams is that it's not that kitchens mean X, it's that your kitchen means X to you,
right.
and
Yes.
that is very important for people to um, consider when they're analyzing their own dreams. Which I know you're short on time, so I wanted to get to your
Interpretation.
your own understanding too, because we made some connections and it may not be a lot deeper to go. We seem to have, in some ways, pinned it down. I like to give people a grand summary, but sometimes it's like, well, here's all the ideas you were thinking over, and fair enough, we clarified it. But now, if you would tell me your understanding of it on your own past self analysis, and we can see maybe where they intersect, overlap. What did you come to on your own?
What's funny is that right before this dream, I was binge watching Royal Pains. I don't know if you've ever seen the show. It's about a concierge doctor. They run the concierge doctor service out of their home, which is this guest house on this massive, rich estate, right? And the part of the series I was in was where the hospital had closed down their emergency room, and so they had just hired on all these extra people, these extra doctors, because they were slammed with emergencies and stuff, because there wasn't an emergency room on the island, because it's on the Hamptons. It's in the Hamptons, and it's not technically an island; it's a peninsula, but whatever,
Close enough.
And so
three quarters of an island.
All these people, massive amounts of people wandering through in their morning staff meetings, right? So it felt very much like that when I was having it in my dream, and so to me that was a representation of a booming business, right? Just lots and lots of business coming in, lots of hustle and bustle. And then when I added that to the bread making and making all the bread for the year, and having, massive quantities of raw materials to make the flour, for the flour to make the bread. And to me, that just, spoke of feeding yourself for, a long time, right? And then we talked about the Renaissance Fair before we got on here, right?
Yeah.
I learned a ritual at the Renaissance Fair for bringing money in. They do this at the Renaissance Fair every morning, the boothies and the booth owners. And they would do this ritual where, when I learned it, you remember the old credit card imprint machines?
Oh,
that you
yes.
go shunk, 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 right?
That's something anyone under 20 years old today has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But the credit card imprint machines, they would literally use them as musical instruments and go shunk, 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 shunk.
Oh, that's awesome.
Shunk, shunk, shunk. And then they would take change in a bag and go chunk, 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 right? And then they would have a song that's money comes to me, right? And that's it, that's all it is. And then they would take pieces of bread, this is how it builds in, right? They would take pieces of bread, and as part of this whole built up song that they were doing, so you'd have 8, 10, 12 people doing this, right? And they'd each take a part, right? And then some of the people would be taking chunks of bread, throwing it into the woods, and saying, bread for bread, bread for bread, bread for bread, bread for bread. They're making an offering of physical bread for money bread, right? And so I had recently, on that retreat weekend that I told you about, shared this ritual with someone that I knew from the event, and one of the other speakers, and we had actually done this ritual together at that event. And so, that bread also represents money to me because of that ritual, right? And so to me, when I interpreted the dream, it was, I've got, and I've been hiring on staff, right? Because my business has been growing. I'm up over 50% over last year. So
Nice.
I've been hiring on staff, but nobody's at capacity yet. So, they're sitting around waiting for more, right? Because I'm planning for there to be a lot more.
Ready for instruction, yeah.
Ready for instruction, right? And the energy coming in, and the bread for bread, and the money, and the all of that, and the raw resources to make it go. And to me, it was a really great omen dream, because I know all of this internal landscape that I have in my own head, right? That you would never have thought to ask about.
Sure.
Right? But I didn't get the part about the missing tools and the woman. I didn't even recognize that there were, I didn't pay attention to the people per se, because in my head I already knew who they were, right?
Sure, yeah.
I figured they were my staff, but she's not on my staff. I can't find a representation for her on my staff. And so I'm like, that's interesting. And so that's really helpful to sort of add that piece into the mix and go, okay, so I didn't find the tools, and I need the comedy relief, right? I need the chilling cool person, to be the voice of, hey, we're gonna get it done, and let's have wine, right?
Yeah. Celebrating the victories too. Afterwards, the decompression, and the fruits of the labor as well too. So you've got and I didn't get the connection of the idea of making bread, making the money, having the results pay dividends is a fantastic thing too. So that fits very well. It's like, and I tell folks all the time is I'm the Dream Wizard. It's branding. I think it's hilarious to grow my hair out and have a beard and woo, spooky woo, magic powers. But it's all just psychology. And I'm not the dream authority necessarily. I know a lot of things, but just because I thought of something doesn't mean it's true. Just because I give offer an understanding doesn't mean it's the only way to look at it. Sometimes you shift your perspective a little bit, you get a different answer. Definitely analyzing your own dreams. I tell folks, you can do this yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else. Mostly, sometimes a second opinion is good, but the tools are all inside you to kind of pull this stuff out and look at it. I just kind of just analogy popped into my head. I'm more of like a midwife for birthing dream understanding than actually applying, giving someone understanding from myself. So,
well, you're a symbology interpreter.
That's it. That's right. Yeah. And it's I love.
Yeah, we teach people how to do energetic and magical work, which I know isn't your paradigm, but it's very similar to dream interpretation in that fashion, because if I took magic and energy work out of it, I just talked about it, how the brain works and how we tap into the archetypal constructs of society and of our history and our literature and whatever, right? All of that is symbology, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to learn how to speak the language of symbology in order to be able to interpret what's being presented to you. And once you do, then everything you ever touch from there forward is so much richer, right? Oh, yeah. Because movies, books, any sort of experience, this is the thing. So this is random, but Mamma Mia, the original movie that they did, which was of the original show, right, had a particular theme. It was an Aphrodite tale, right? It's an Aphrodite tale. And there are three aspects of Aphrodite: Ouranos and Pandemos. And so, you've got the mother and the daughter, and they had this mythology was that if you drink from the well of Aphrodite, you will find the love of your life. And then they did the second movie and they broke the paradigm, because the person who wrote it clearly did not understand that the reason why the first one was so wildly popular. And they broke it by having, one of the marriages was on the rocks, one of the people had died, the mother was totally not the person who was described in the first movie. It's just everything was akimbo. Like the movie opened and I wanted to leave because it was so wrong.
Yeah.
So out of alignment because they didn't understand their own internal mythology. Right?
Yeah.
And so, those are the sorts of things that happen when you don't speak fluent symbology, right?
It's true. And even say someone who was not as knowledgeable as you, they're still going to get that same feeling from the second movie, that sequel, that just what happened? It was this thing and it felt a specific way and it meant something. This is not that. We even get this just as gut instinct of like, this is not, these things are not the same. Yeah. So that's that's what I try to do as much as possible, is just take my crazy abstract nature, just this thing I do naturally every day all by myself, and try to bring it to people and say, have you thought of it this way? And it either works or it doesn't, and I look like a goofball, and sometimes I make sense and it helps people.
Well, and there are layers of meaning. The wonderful thing about symbology is that it is not limited by the words. And so therefore the layers of meaning are cross-associated across multiple different experiences, like, the randomness of the stuff I did with my mom, the TV show I was watching, and the ritual that I knew from 20 years ago that I did last weekend, right? It's like, who's going to put that together except I put it together because I speak fluent symbology, right? And to me, those in my head, those are connected. Right?
For sure.
But if you weren't in my head, they would not be connected for you because you don't have the same experiences, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's what my process tries to do, is to try and connect those dots for you and try to get it. Well, try to put myself inside your head, inside your experience as much as possible to do that. I'm looking at the clock for you. I know you gotta run, so we should probably do the outros. Was there any final thoughts on the dream itself, on connections that we didn't stress enough, or any like small puzzling elements, like why did that appear in that way? I just like to ask folks. You don't have to have something.
No, I don't think so. I got my new level of insight, and I thank you for that.
Very cool.
That was awesome.
I really feel good about that too. I enjoy doing it for people. That's why I do this. I really enjoy it. Okay, so we're gonna say, hey, everybody watching, that's about it. The dreams don't have to be very long to get something very useful out of it. So I'm gonna say once again, thank you to our guest, Kelle Sparta. That's Kelle with an E at the end, Kelle. You can find her at kellesparta.com, at SpiritSherpaPodcast.com. Also, Spirit Sherpa on multiple podcast platforms. Kelle Sparta 1 at Facebook. And I really appreciate you being here. This has been fascinating for me too, to meet another fellow magical practitioner in that sense, living in the world of symbols and trying to open our eyes to deeper, meaningful, useful truths. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
Right on. Then I'm just going to do my 30 seconds of housekeeping. Oh, I can never do it without a script. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteers to share their dreams. Please buy a t-shirt, coffee mug at the Spring Store. 10 currently available works of historical dream literature on Amazon. Currently working on book 11. That's the housekeeping. And I'm just going to say, everyone, thanks for listening.